Yohei, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Hey Eric, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I would put you in the category of people who are famous by their first names and first names only, if you will. It's like Beyonce and it's Yohei. And there aren't many people who command such an aura and an energy that you know them by their first name alone, but you are one of them. And so I'm so excited to talk to you today because I know you've been up to a lot of really cool things post graduation. Maybe why don't you start and just tell me sort of like where you're at today, what you're up to, and then we can go into from the time you graduated to today.
Yeah, it's been what 15 years.
Yeah.
Today I have the pleasure of running a venture capital fund. So I got to start my own firm about 3 years ago called Untapped Capital, and we are investing in early stage startups. And alongside investing, I've been doing a lot of building of fun products as well. So kind of between those two and the three kids keeping me busy.
Three kids. So I have to say, I watched your TED Talk, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point in this conversation. And I think one of the things you said that was so cool in your TED Talk was, I'm obsessed with my wife, which is a great way for a speaker to sort of lean into their personal life. How did you meet your wife?
Partying in LA. There was an after hours burner club in Culver City that I was going to regularly. I was going so often that I became friends with the performers and I joined a fire dancing crew. So I was a fire dancing performer at this after hours burner club in Culver City and met her there.
That's amazing. And you mentioned that you have children. You say three kids, was it?
Yep. Nope.
Awesome.
Girl,
How
girl, boy, 7, 4, and the boy just turned 2 today.
Wow. Oh my God. Happy birthday. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Um,
got we got all the whole baby birthday party this weekend.
that's awesome. That's awesome. What does a 2-year-old want for their birthday these days?
I think just to run around and throw balloons in the air.
Yeah. Um, well, okay, cool. So you have a beautiful family life. You're running your own venture fund. Why don't you tell me like what, because you and I have kept an okay touch, but not maybe great touch since graduation, just because, life happens and whatnot. Tell me what you've been doing post graduation and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I'll give you the short version because 15 years is long. But basically,
Yeah.
after college, I tried to start my own company. This is in Los Angeles. It was in the kind of entertainment event space. Made every mistake possible. Um, Biggest mistake was not meeting other founders,
Mm,
meeting other startup founders, and surrounding myself with that community, which there wasn't much of in LA. And it was about a year in that I kind of got connected to the LA community, which was still small at the time. So I got obsessed with the kind of just like growing that community. Obviously, being SAC at CMC, kind of going into the event planning role
of
within the
course.
LA ecosystem was very natural for me. So I became kind of a community leader running a lot of events in LA. And that's when Techstars came to Los Angeles to spin up the Disney Accelerator, which was a
Mm,
startup investing program alongside Disney. And I hounded the leader of that program until he brought me onto the team. So I got to start investing alongside Disney into startups. That's how I got into the investing side.
that's
Um,
amazing. And I would imagine for Disney when they're making investments, their businesses are so broad. I would imagine there's probably some, entertainment investments. There might be some like ticketing investments. What were some of the things that you were looking at, and what like really got you interested and excited?
I mean, Disney's a powerhouse, right? They have
Yeah,
these, their departments are right, like Disney Parks, which runs the largest parks in the world, films, TV, radio, consumer goods. I mean, number of toys they sell. They also have games, and then they had Marvel and Lucasfilm. So
yeah,
what was really cool was that as we were looking at all of these startups, for every startup we were looking at, we were kind of check marking like what are the departments within Disney that might be interested. So every year we invested in 10 companies.
mm,
And then we got to connect them into all of these business units as they came by. So we got to meet all these different Disney business units coming in and connecting with startups. And what I thought was really, what I learned a lot about was just like how Disney operates as an organization and
yeah,
how just like organized and thoughtful they are about everything they do, which was pretty mind blowing.
yeah, yeah. So okay, started your own company to then Techstars. Techstars obviously gives you a
Yep.
great exposure to two things: seeing how Disney operates, and also presumably this was your first time sort of investing, and you get to realize that you love it, what have you. Talk to me about your life then post Techstars and
Yeah,
how
so
long.
actually within Techstars, after the first few years of the Disney program, I wanted to look for another role within Techstars. And one of the things I was surprisingly or pretty good at Disney was actually finding interesting companies
Mm,
for that program. And simultaneously, Techstars was starting to grow pretty rapidly. They were hitting about 30 programs, and each program was responsible for finding their own startups, but they were starting to think about having a central resource for supporting each program with the recruitment of startups.
mm.
So they designed this director pipeline role, which was housed under the innovation team because it was a new role, and they tapped me to run that. So I got to be kind of the top of funnel
Cool.
sourcing support for about 30 different programs. At which point, I got to engage with all the other programs that work with corporate. So we had a retail program with Target, we had a mobility program with Ford and Honda, we had a
Cool.
voice program with Alexa. And my role at every point was whenever these programs were kicking off, they would basically come to me and say, "Hey, we're looking for voice related startups." And I would just get to go 1 month deep on voice and like
Yeah.
build a lead
Cool.
list for that program. And I got to do that for about a few years.
That's so cool. You were probably seeing, I mean, I would imagine hundreds, if not
Oh,
thousands of
tens of
startup, tens
tens
of
of thousands.
thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I was the top of funnel for 30 different
Sure.
programs. So my job was to just look at every single company and then like narrow it down to pass it on to the program. So it was just like incredible pattern matching there.
Yeah, yeah. And this was also probably at a time when I'm imagining it's like the early 2010s, if you will, where
Yeah.
there's just an absolute startup boom across all these different places. We didn't know maybe at the time, but we were about to step into a 10-year period, if you will, of like just
Yeah.
amazing proliferation of startups. Were there any really crazy ones that you look back on and you say, boy, I wish I had invested or, what have you?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of crazy companies we've come across. The ones that obviously have an impact are the ones that we did invest in to some,
Yeah.
because those are the
Yeah.
ones we got to work with. I remember at Disney, we worked with a company called Open Bionics that
Okay.
was doing 3D printed prosthetics for kids,
Oh, wow.
which would
Cool.
which would allow, because kids grow really fast. The idea was that you could use the same mechanics, but then just keep 3D printing the rest of the parts so that it
Oh,
wouldn't cost
cool.
as much as the kid
Wow.
grew. What was really cool is they were able to secure licenses from Lucasfilm, Marvel, and Disney so they could sell Iron Man prosthetic arms for kids that lit
Oh,
up,
cool.
which really made these kids feel like superheroes versus
Oh,
like, oh,
that's
I have to
so
wear prosthetic
cool.
arms. So that was probably one of the coolest partnerships. And just like, I mean, watching kids put on,
Yeah.
the first, Iron Man prosthetic and like using it and no, just their eyes or the face lighting up and all that was just
That's
incredible.
so cool. That
Yeah.
is so cool. Yeah, it's amazing. You look at prosthetics even from say 30 years ago and they look, rudimentary at best. You look at them today, it's amazing what some of these people can do and it's so cool that some of your work then impacted kids too, right? Because I would
Yeah.
imagine as a child, if you're in need of a prosthetic, that's a hard thing. Very cool then to have an Iron Man arm.
Yeah, like
Um,
the goal was to almost make other kids jealous, right?
Yeah, right. I'm a little. I mean, I don't want to go so far to say I'm jealous, but that's pretty cool.
I- yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you were doing top of funnel work for Techstars, and it sounds like you
Yep.
saw thousands, if not tens of thousands, of
Yep.
startups. Very cool.
At
Keep
which
telling, yeah,
point, yeah, at which point I knew, like, I love this investing thing. It was so much fun,
yeah,
working with founders, investing in them, supporting them. I knew I wanted to run my own firm at some point. So I joined Scrum Ventures, which is a Bay Area based venture fund that had close ties to Japan.
mm,
Um, they were, having speaking Japanese, I was thinking, oh, it might make sense for me to learn how to raise capital from Japan. And there was this
yeah,
firm that I had met when I was working at the Disney Accelerator. And coincidentally, they were just starting to spin up a corporate innovation program targeting Japanese corporates. And their
mm,
first client that they were about to close was Nintendo. And he had been using the Disney Accelerator as an example to sell this idea of a program to
wow,
them. So when I reached out saying I want to learn how to run a VC, can you bring me on? It was a great match. He was like, yeah,
beautiful fit.
you can join our investment team, learn how the VC fund operates, but can you run Nintendo for me? I was like, yeah, I'll work with Nintendo. Um, so that turned into an awesome relationship where I got to help spin up their consulting arm. I got to build a deep relationship with Nintendo. I've been working with them for 4 years now and just helping them
Wow,
find interesting startups.
yeah.
But that was where I kind of learned the ropes of venture capital. Spent about 3-4 years there before spinning out on my own.
Yeah, amazing. And tell me, I mean, obviously you're like a natural born leader. You always have been. You were a leader at Claremont, but there's a difference between being, say, an investor with Scrum and then saying, taking the leap and saying, I'm going to start my own thing.
Yeah.
What was, talk to me about that journey?
So I knew at some point I was going to run a venture fund. When I joined Scrum, it was on my like within the next 10 years I'll raise a fund.
Yeah.
I while I worked there, I had come up with a couple of thesis ideas, even put together decks and just like brainstorm, but nothing really clicked. And then it was one exercise that I did that suddenly clicked, and I had this idea that I couldn't let go of, which was the idea of doing outbound at the earliest stages, which is what I did
Mm.
at Techstars. I realized that every early stage investor relies on referrals.
Mm.
You know, um, the result is that like well-networked founders can talk to a lot of VCs, but founders who've never met VCs always struggle to raise, even if it's a good company.
Yeah.
So I had this thesis that if I was willing to hunt, like actually do outbound at the earliest stages, that there would be that unique strategy could produce returns. And that idea, just like I couldn't let go of it. And as
Yeah.
I talked to people, it started forming into a thesis that I that made sense. And I had a couple of people say, "Yeah, I'd back that."
Yeah.
It was definitely like, probably from a career perspective, I knew I was probably at the earliest I could feasibly raise a fund. If
Yeah.
anything, it might have been a hint too early, but I just went for it, and I barely squeezed into getting my first fund up and running, and so far it's going well.
And help me with the timeline. So when you first got this up and running, this was when?
December 2019 is when I started, when I
Oh my
officially
God.
decided.
Wow. So something happened 3 months later, I think, in the
Yeah.
world, if I
I
recall
I I
correctly.
I remember saying, "I'm gonna start a fund December 2019." I was like, "I need a few months to prep. I'm gonna start fundraising March of 2020." So I
Yeah.
spent
Oh
January,
my
February
God.
preparing, and I was like, March 2020, all right, let me set up meetings. All meetings get canceled.
Oh
But
my goodness.
fortunately, I had been remote for almost 5 years before COVID hit. So
Yeah.
my office was like soundproofed, and I was used to working at my home. So I just switched gears, and I was like, everyone stopped working. I'm just gonna, do a Zoom fundraise.
Yeah.
And yeah, so um, Untapped Capital was forged in the fires of COVID.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what an amazing story. And I mean, maybe
Well,
because I'm hoping, obviously, as many people from CMC'09 and frankly the CMC community listen to this. I mean, when I hear that story, if I'm you in March of 2020, I just tried to start my own thing and I'm having a trial by fire. This is a really uncertain time, right? And just because you already told me the ages of your kids, you're married, you at least have, one kid. This has to be tough. What was going through your mind?
honestly, I think the fact that I had been remote
Yeah,
felt like a strength to me. I felt like everyone was like trying
interesting.
to figure out what to do. And so
Yeah,
everyone stopped fundraising. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep going. Like
I love
this is
that.
no different for me.
I love that.
And reflecting on my time fundraising then, the easiest time to get in touch with people was during those first 6 months after COVID hit, when it seems like
Interesting.
everyone else stopped fundraising.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
so there was just less competition for attention,
Yeah,
and everyone
that's
else who was
amazing.
all the other investors were also like, stuck at home and
Yeah,
like, not really sure what to do. So they were willing to jump on Zoom calls with anybody. So I felt
yeah.
like I did a good job of taking advantage of the fact. Like my initial plan was to go reach out to a whole bunch of Seattle LPs and go to a whole bunch of meetings in person. But I just switched gears and said, now it doesn't matter where the LP is. Let me just reach out to anybody anywhere and just jump on Zoom calls with them.
I love that. I love that. I love hearing a story when someone has this sort of natural born skill or forged skill. And this for you, obviously, it was like being remote and that you've built up over years.
Yep.
And then there's just a time where, hey, I can deploy this. I can beat people at this. I'm going to lean in and you're successful. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, so many people from our class have gotten into startups and tech, and something that I really admire about what you've done is you seem to have this ethos of building in public, um, and you're a real builder. I mean, I think sometimes when we talk investors, I think of like someone who just deploys capital and not as much someone who is actually, say, building and doing things. Right? They're deploying into companies. You have a really cool history of building. I know you went viral on Twitter for a baby
I did.
AGI. Can you talk
Yeah.
to me about your building philosophy and what you've built and why you're building what you're building?
Yeah, so I've always been somebody who likes to build little tools to make my life easier, and I've always done that
Yeah.
my whole life, whether it's a small website or a little form, or even if it doesn't have to do tech. And I've always done it at work as well. But when I was working at Scrum and Techstars, I do remember now reflecting back on it, a lot of the cool stuff I just couldn't share publicly because it was built on private data. So
Mm.
I would share the cool stuff I built, but it was usually just like internally at the company, and people would say, "Oh, look, Yohei's doing some weird fun thing over there." As soon as I started my fund, I realized no one was stopping me from just sharing everything publicly because it was my fund. Like I choose what gets shared and what doesn't. Like I
Yeah.
decide what's a competitive advantage. So I
Yeah.
just started kind of sharing whatever I was doing early on in my fund. Actually, so one of the kickers for starting Untapped is I realized a lot of VCs just ran very inefficiently. Like a
Mm.
lot of people still run off spreadsheets or just a standard CRM. So I knew that I wanted in-house technology when we started our firm. I actually tried to start coding my own CRM when I started the fund.
Mm.
When I realized that like spending time writing code was not the right place for me to spend time, I'm not even that good at it.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, no code was picking up. Webflow,
Yeah.
Airtable, those were raising a lot of, those were kind of hitting growth stages. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
no code is interesting. I like this space. So I just committed to building our whole fund on no code. So I said, you know what, I'm going to drop all this PHP, MySQL, whatever non-code
Yeah.
stuff that I know. Let me just like try to build a fund on Airtable. And I started building our fund on Airtable, built our CRM, built our LP portal, our website. Again, this is all during 2020 as I'm setting up the fund. Probably because it was also COVID, I just started like tweeting as I was building these things. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna build my no, I need to build my LP portal. Like, I'm gonna start building it now. And I would just like tweet about building.
And if I
And
can
what I
interrupt
really
real quick, I know
go
you
for it.
have 70,000 Twitter followers today, but how many did you have when you were starting this?
Probably at like 10,000 at that point.
Okay. So you were like
Yeah.
a known entity, but it
It
wasn't
was
at the
known, but it
level.
was,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Maybe it could have been less than that, maybe at that point. But yeah, it wasn't too, it was probably like a few thousand, 7,000 maybe. But I
Yeah.
started tweeting about building with no code. And the result was I got a lot of no code deal flow. No
Yeah.
code founders were sharing my tweets with each other. All of my VC friends saw me as a no code guy, and everyone sent
Yeah.
me their no code deals. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened with Web3. This wasn't
Yeah.
intentional, but when NFTs started to bubble up, like having worked with Disney and Nintendo, like DeFi didn't really click for me. It just reminded me of class. Um, having studied finance, but NFTs, I was like, this is fun. I get it. So I launched my own NFT collection, and then ended up building a community and integrated with a lot of projects. But that's how I learned about Web3. Same
Cool.
thing. Met a lot of Web3 blockchain founders. Met a lot of VCs who then saw me as a Web3 guy and sent me all their
Yeah.
Web3 deals. Um, and then again, the third time this happened was with AI, where I came across OpenAI probably about 6 months before ChatGPT came out, and was
Okay.
just blown
Yeah.
away by what like this tech could do. So I started building on top of OpenAI and quickly started building a reputation building with AI. Um, and so this was kind of an accident where I was like, oh, if I just like build stuff and tweet about it, like I get deal flow. That's great.
Yeah.
The great thing about AI was that it actually sped up my ability to build because like I was using AI to build AI tools and I was just getting
Yeah.
faster and faster. So I quickly got to a point where I was like spending 30 minutes a weekend pumping out one or two prototypes.
Yeah.
And it could be, about a third of the projects were tools we were using in-house. We have like AI analysts, AI summarizing my emails, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
I actually remember seeing your tweets about an AI reading your emails and being like, this is really cool. Like Yohei's actually onto something really cool. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, about a third were like targeting founders. And so there was about 70 projects in that this project, Baby AGI, unexpectedly went viral. I was, I challenged myself to prototype an autonomous startup founder over a weekend. And then when I shared a demo, people kind of just went crazy. They were like, "Wait, is this a founder or is this more than that?" And then I kind of like played around and realized that it was kind of a base architecture for what could become a powerful autonomous agent. So actually, Jenny from CMC was the one who commented on Twitter and called it Baby AGI.
Oh,
When I
no kidding.
released it, yeah, when I released it, it was I had ChatGPT name it. So it was called the Task-Driven Autonomous Agent. And then as it was going viral, Jenny actually commented, "Bro, did you just build Baby AGI?"
That's
Which is,
amazing.
and I took that name, I gave it to the open source project, and then that project ended up going really viral.
Has your life like changed at all because you went viral?
I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think within the AI space, it seems like I'm pretty well known, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Result was I got to go to TED and speak at TED AI.
Right.
It was pretty surreal to like meet Stephen Wolfram and Andrew Ng, who was like, "Oh
Wow.
yeah, you're the
Yeah.
baby AGI guy."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, okay. You know me, cool."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Um, that's an amazing story. That's a really amazing story. And I think if we were to place bets back in 2009 about, hey, who might have a viral tweet, who might be, famous with us, you'd be a really strong contender for this. So I'm going to ask you to then look forward, say 15 years in the future. What do you hope for your venture fund 15 years from now? And what do you hope for yourself 15 years from now?
oh, it would be cool to have an institution that we've built with a team with multiple funds,
Yeah.
with built out technology, continuing to push forward kind of the VC ecosystem and what can be done within the space, and hopefully investing in impactful companies that have made the world a better place, um, and spending lots of time with family.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love it. We're coming up towards the end of our time, so I just have a couple of quick questions for you that I'm asking all of my guests on the show. First is, what was your favorite CMC class?
I think I have to say it was probably one of two Conger classes, either one on leadership
Mm,
or entrepreneurship, because it
mm,
was just so closely tied to what I'm working with on a day to day basis, and
yeah,
it just I think the entrepreneurship class, all the case studies, I feel like it really just exposed me to like the different aspects of startups and founding companies.
sure, sure. I know that Claremont
Uh,
had a lot of like really cool org psych classes that I actually still use every day. So glad to hear that you had the same thing.
uh,
My next question was going to be favorite professor. Is this Conger also,
it would definitely
or
be Conger.
yeah?
Yeah, he's one I've kept in touch with the most after graduating.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Favorite CMC party?
Pirate Party, hands down, of course.
Okay, so I have to tell you this, and you and I had an email exchange, of course,
Yeah,
before this, but I went back to Claremont last February for a commitment, and I happened to meet some current students. And I said, "Hey, what's your favorite party?" And without fail, every single person said Pirate Party
that's
was their
awesome.
favorite party. And you are the godfather of the Pirate Party.
I
So
did
maybe just
starting.
for the listeners, can you talk to me about the genesis of the Pirate Party?
Yeah. I remember our freshman year, there was a pirate versus ninja party,
Okay.
and I loved dressing up as a pirate. I loved Pirates of the Caribbean, and
Yes.
I did the whole,
Yes.
the Johnny Depp whatever I makeup thing. Um, and I noticed that the ninja costumes were just like poor. It was everybody who was too lazy to dress up, just wearing all their black clothes. So when I became SAC, I made the executive decision to kill the pirates. So the announcement in the party inform said, "Pirates won last year. The ninjas have been defeated.
Oh,
This year is
wow.
going to be a pirate party, and we're going to start celebrating during the day." So I took
I
this
love that.
pirate versus ninja party, which is a pretty common theme, but
Yeah,
essentially
sure.
killed the ninjas and pulled it
Yeah,
forward to a daytime party. And that was the first pirate party.
I love that. I love that. This is gospel that needs to be spread throughout the Claremont community, that you are the godfather of this, and that it started
Yes,
off as
that
pirate
is my
versus
that is
ninja.
my legacy.
It's your legacy. It's a good legacy.
Yeah,
It's a great
yeah. I
legacy.
think it might be more important than Baby AGI.
Debatable, debatable, but
Yeah, well,
it's a good question.
yeah.
Favorite memory from Claremont?
Man, favorite memory. Honestly, I loved setting up for parties. That was always fun. It's weird to think, but like I remember like carrying fences from like the back of
Yeah.
Storyhouse to like the parties, and like just during the day getting those parties set up with like the excitement, and like having people like go to class watching you set up the party and like looking forward to it. That was definitely my favorite times.
Yeah, I don't know that we ever had a better party chairperson than you. So I feel like we were there in the heyday, and I'm glad that your favorite memories were setting those up, because I know that everyone did enjoy them so much. Who do you keep in touch with, and maybe who do you want to give some shout outs to?
Man, that's I didn't know you were gonna ask me this. Lots of pressure. I mean, I think I mean, obviously, my family is the first person who came to mind. But on the Claremont side, I'll give a shout out to Miles Bird because he's been
Yeah,
building out Storyhouse Ventures. I get to work with him pretty closely because he's deep in the VC ecosystem, but he's been building out
right.
a firm very focused on the Claremont ecosystem. So everybody from the LPs to the founders are Claremont alums and students, and it's been awesome to kind of follow his journey. And through him, I basically learned about every Claremont founder. So
Yeah.
It's
Just a
it's it's a
quick plug,
I
because
love what he's
I've
doing.
kept in touch with Miles also. My God, what he's building is so cool. And there might be no
Yeah.
one better or more poised to build what he's building. For those that don't know, it's a venture fund that just looks to back Claremont graduates, right?
Yep.
And there was some stat, I'm not going to butcher it sort of live on this episode, but I think that Claremont founders have raised more money than just about any, educational institution out there, with maybe the exception of Stanford. And so it's a great venture fund, and that's a great shout out to give.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited about what he's building.
Last question, because this is about a reunion. I'm hoping that this spurs people to get back in touch with each other. So I'm going to ask you to finish this sentence. Someone should slide into my DMs to chat about.
AI or Claremont? Honestly, yeah, my Twitter DMs are pretty open. So yeah, anybody can reach out anytime. It's always good to catch up with people. I'm always happy
Cool.
to hear from anybody.
Cool. Cool. Well, Yohei, this was a blast. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you.
It's so great to see all the awesome stuff that you're up to. And it was so great to, reconnect just now. And I'm looking forward to keeping in touch.
Thanks. You too.
Awesome. Thanks so much,
Awesome.
Yohei.
Cheers.